So, today I'm here with my very old friend. Oh, wait, I guess, is it bad to say old friend? Because that means you're old.
A friend of old times.
Friend of old times. A friend from long ago. Special friend. And I've known this guy for
20-odd years.
20-some years. Interesting guy. This is Brian Grant. I'm still Brian Fay. Brian Grant is visiting the Bosque Village, and we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, that is the hurricane that he just experienced.
Yeah.
So, you were in Puerto Rico.
Yes. I live in Puerto Rico, moved there a few years ago, and hurricanes coming through. This was, Irma was the first one, and made sure to coordinate with a friend to stay in a good building on...
So you knew it was coming. You heard it was coming.
Yeah. Thank God for NOAA. NOAA kicks ass.
National Oceanographic...
An Atmospheric Association.
Okay.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they told me, get ready for a hurricane. You kind of watch it from like a couple weeks out, and you're like, what's the chance it's actually going to come near?
Right.
And Irma steered a little bit north, so it was kind of like a practice hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
In that it was going to come through, and it was going to not really hit us in San Juan. It was going to be over the ocean.
So you got the edge of the hurricane. You didn't get a direct hit.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is in 2017.
That's right. In fact, in September.
Okay, so this is a few months ago for you. So you get hit by the first...
You.
Yeah. We're in the same time zone.
Look at that.
Shared world. As if it was
But
a
maybe
shared
not
reality.
for you.
No, these people are a little slower, so they'll be joining us later. Hi, people. Anyway, so this is your first hurricane.
Yes.
Have you been in a natural disaster before this? Earthquake, something?
Well, I've been in several earthquakes living in on the West Coast. There have been tornado watches growing up in the Midwest.
So the answer is no.
But not a situation where a natural disaster really disrupts society.
Right. And as far as I read, Puerto Rico got stomped on, but not by the first hurricane.
Well, then that's skipping ahead to Maria. That's right.
Okay, Maria was the hurricane. Right.
The second hurricane.
Second hurricane. Okay, so
first we say what happened with Irma, and,
okay,
and what is your first hurricane like, and so the answer is it was a great practice hurricane. We had got lots of water, and I lost power for a week.
Oh, that's still significant.
But during the hurricane, we were in a good building, felt completely safe. The building had kind of a a little bit of a shape like this, and we were kind of over here in it. So it kind of like created its own low wind area.
Okay, so you felt protected in the first one.
Yeah.
You did not fear for your life.
No.
Okay,
no,
but things were messed up. You lost power.
Lost power, and let's see, what else? That was it.
Okay, was your daughter there at the time?
Oh yeah. So
okay. So she cared too.
We were staying with friends, but they didn't lose power during that one.
Okay. Let's skip to the second one then, because that sounds funner.
Well, I mean, hold on a second.
Okay.
Their generator kicked in.
Okay.
And so it's like we're watching a movie. The kids are happy.
Right.
Everything's...
Windows didn't break in or anything?
Windows didn't break.
Okay.
Water's running. No problem.
Yeah, it sounds pretty easy.
Yeah.
How much after that was Maria?
When did Irma hit? I feel like Irma was first week of September, and Maria was like 2 weeks later.
Okay. So your practice hurricane goes okay.
Yeah.
Second hurricane, way bigger. And it hits you direct.
It hits us directly, yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen the pictures. It doesn't look great.
So it's it's just as big a hurricane, really.
And did they warn you more? Did they say, like, this is going to stomp on you?
Kind of. I filled in the blanks,
Okay.
and I realized I needed to tell people that I might be out of communication.
Right.
And when I realized the hurricane was actually going to hit Puerto Rico, I thought, well, I'm a smart guy. I look at my web pages. I have better information than most of the world. I'll just buy a plane ticket now.
Right.
I'm the last guy to hit that button, right?
Everybody flew out, or some people flew out.
The Puerto Ricans are smart about like what's going to make a difference and when to leave, and I could not get a flight. I say, okay, I'm a smart guy. I've got some savings. Savings, by the way, I want to talk about that in permaculture. I think savings is an important aspect of preparedness.
Right.
I said, I've got some savings. I'll book a hotel. These hotels are better equipped than my dinky little apartment, which loses power, and I don't have a backup generator. Go over to the hotels. They're all booked. I was like, oh.
This is not their first hurricane, nor their second. Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got some preparedness work to do, and I tried to get stuff in for after the first hurricane. I realized I really wanted a backpacker solar panel that could just at least charge my phone.
Right.
I'm already the kind of guy that has a ham radio, and
Cool.
and I got a like extra car battery, and I can charge off USB with that, and I had a bunch of stuff, but still the second one was a much bigger deal.
Okay, what time does the hurricane hit? I mean, we're talking morning or night or?
The hurricane is... So hurricanes are really interesting in that the wind is steady and it's steadily increasing.
Right.
And then as the little arms of the hurricane roll past you, there's like these squalls, basically, of high wind and then complete calm.
Is this the center of the storm, the eye of the storm?
No,
thing?
this is like a day before the thing hits.
Oh, so okay,
And,
so
and
it's,
you're like
it's a
just
slow growing.
you're watching it and you're like, that was a windy squall. Okay. So
It sounds fun to me, to be honest, but I realize it wasn't fun for a lot of people.
we're right, and it was it's very there's this primal excitement of like the force of nature,
Right.
and that is amazing.
You are small now.
Yeah,
Nature's
right,
big.
Right. This is good for your philosophical perspective.
Yeah.
So your philosophical perspective is saying this is the best day ever. Look, we're on a pale blue dot, and we're in this little swirling air. How silly that we would be afraid of this.
Yeah.
And yet, big deal.
Yeah.
So, so I'm trying to pack up, trying to bring fun stuff over to my other friend's house. I didn't want to. I wanted to spread the I'm showing up at your place to save my life. Crash your hurricane party around.
Yeah.
A little bit, spread it around.
And so people do group together.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, so we stayed with another family with kids that my daughter's friends with, and we're friends with, and they're in another well-equipped condo. They've got their own water cistern. They've got their own generator. Their generator has like fuel for a week. Their cistern has thousands of gallons, whatever, for like a week, which I now understand why is such a premium thing to have. And during the hurricane, the power eventually goes out as the hurricane hits the far end of the island, out like several hours drive away. And the power does this because as the power fails, the power company is saying, it's going to be safer at some point not to be pumping any juice into these downed areas, right, because that's how people can die.
And there's fires or something, or?
I haven't thought of that,
Okay.
but
So for some reason they decide it's better to shut it down.
it's better to shut it down now.
Okay.
So the whole island goes out, boom,
Yeah.
when the hurricane really hits the edge of the island. And no problem, except the generator doesn't switch over correctly.
Okay.
And it's like this it's a simple circuit breaker problem, but I've never tried to flip a circuit breaker, like a 150 amp circuit breaker. the reset, like, I know I'm supposed to like switch it all the way off, but I don't know how much force I'm supposed to apply to do it.
Okay.
And the homeowner hadn't gone through all this themselves either. So we were just a little confused down at the circuit breaker box. Fortunately, all the stuff we stuck our heads in, we didn't touch, so nobody died. So power's out. Pretty soon water starts coming in the ceiling from somebody a couple stories up who didn't close their windows correctly. So there are these metal storm covers, corrugated. They're kind of like they fold up like an accordion.
Right.
And there are two kinds of people in Puerto Rico: those who successfully muscle through all the like problems with their storm shutters and actually get them to close,
Right.
and make sure they're seated in their tracks, and those who don't.
Right. And there was somebody who didn't.
And there's somebody who didn't, yeah. Which was common. Many storm shutters blew off because of the strength of the winds.
Wow.
And if you were at all, incomplete in your work, your incomplete grade was quite disastrous.
So kind of being prepared isn't quite as good as being prepared enough to actually put in action the safe things you need.
It was a matter of like actually believing that your diligence mattered. For those people who had at least that level of preparedness. Now, in the building right next to this building, it didn't matter how prepared they were because construction-wise, the windows themselves were not seated strongly enough, and the entire window frames blew out.
Right.
Or blew in.
So they were prepared for a smaller hurricane, but not for this one.
Correct. Yeah. And that building next to us had probably seen Jorge in early 2000s. I think it was 2000 or 2001. So yeah, you had to check your own architectural stuff. You had to get your own preparedness stuff in gear. Okay, so water's coming in through the ceiling, and we're mopping it up and basically manning the ship. And this taught us another really important thing. Everybody who left, their houses were in much worse shape than people who manned the ship.
Right.
Because little things became big things over time.
If nobody's there to fight it.
If no one was fighting it, that's right. So we're mopping up this water. Like all the sheetrock in the condo is destroyed, like because of the way the water flows, and it buckles it, and the seams pull apart. And
how many people in the place you're in?
How many floors or
No,
how many
people?
in the
you're talking with people
apartment.
while you're mopping stuff up. Is there 20 people or two?
So it's me and my daughter and a husband and wife and their 3 kids. They have more kids, but not there.
Yeah, so a fairly small group.
Yeah.
And so at this point, when this is happening, is there panic at all, or is people just like, hey, this is happening, we need to do this, you do this?
Then the fire alarm started going off.
Okay, and there might be a fire. Who knows?
There might be a fire, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's quite likely it's just this water problem screwing with some contacts.
Hey, come here, Shiva, knock it off. Come here, Bass. See, I told you about the problems I have.
Yeah.
Yep. So continue.
Eventually we figure out how to get to the fire alarm control panel downstairs, and we do a pretty good job of monkeying with that until we can at least stop the fire alarm from going off. But I mean, it's frustrating enough that in that moment, the man in the house is up there with a hammer attempting to bash the fire alarm off of his wall.
Right. So it's at least interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at this point, do you feel like you're calm, collected, and dealing with an emergency, or do you also feel panicked at all? You must have adrenaline.
Yeah. I'm just not tired at all.
Right.
It's
You're very
extremely
awake.
interesting. We're doing the important things, and I am not tired at all.
Right.
So the hurricane really starts hitting around like I think the power went out like around 8 p.m. And I think the fire alarm incident was like sometime around close to midnight, 2 a.m. And so the storm is steadily building until about 9 a.m. And that's when the eye passes just south of San Juan. And we know in the moment when this is happening, without internet, without power, because we have barometers.
Measuring pressure.
Yes.
Air pressure.
And we're watching the barometer keep going down, and then the barometer starts going up. And this is, like every sailor knows, the most important tool for understanding where you are relative to a storm.
Out of curiosity, is this an analog or digital barometer?
This is an app.
It's an app.
Yeah.
Your phone has a barometer in it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Yours
that.
does too.
Didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Okay. And so at this point, you can tell where the hurricane is, more or less, kind of, what is based on air pressure.
I mean, we know where it was supposed to go.
Right.
And we know when it's at its nearest point. Although, there's, like, unbeknownst to me at the moment, my brother is texting me saying, oh, it might be the eye of the hurricane. You don't know.
Right.
But the eye, didn't hit us. The eye
Right.
went south of us.
Right. So you did not experience the eye of the hurricane thing.
Right. But the pressure was pretty low. I think I was measuring in millimeters of mercury, mmHg, and I think it went. I remember the first one. My ears started hurting when it went below 1,000. I don't know exactly what altitude that equates to, but the second one, of course, the pressure went lower, but my ears did not hurt, so that was good. One of the interesting things about information is that it was incredibly important to understand exactly when the storm was coming, because I was able to go get extra water from the store.
Right. You need to know if you're safe to even go rapidly and do something.
To keep preparing. Do I have time to keep preparing,
Right.
or do I need to hold up right now?
Hunker down.
Right. And in the first hurricane, I got like the last Uber ride over to my friend's place. In the second hurricane, I got outside with my nice suitcase and my pack and my kid, and I like looked at the Uber app and it's like Uber not available. Like they had already shut down. I was like, oops.
Yeah.
I thought I was going early enough. I allowed more time before the hurricane was supposed to pass by.
Just out of curiosity, does the Uber price go up during this?
It did not warn me that it was.
Okay.
And I was going to a different location, so I don't know. The issue was there were not as many drivers.
Right.
So I got the first hurricane. I got that driver's like he's the last ride. He's like, yeah, it's getting pretty windy. We're done today.
Now,
Yeah, I'm gonna like fire up the fire up the stove, make sure my cooking's done. So the most important tools were Noah's answer of when this is gonna hit and barometer, and then of course all the like in the moment stuff, lights.
Water going.
Ice, having things on ice,
Okay.
having extra water around, yeah. Water would be nice right now. I'm feeling. Oh, anyway,
Okay.
I'll be fine.
One sec.
Let's see. So we're in the hurricane, and what other things happened? Well, it turns out we've got enough cold stuff in the freezer and the fridge that 48 hours later, we feel. When we finally figure out the circuit breaker and get the power on from the generator, we feel the fridge is like salvageable. Maybe a couple things not, but mostly yes.
So it passes.
Yeah.
And then does the sun come out? I mean...
Not immediately, no. It's still like more clouds.
Okay. But now you can see out in the street. What are you seeing? I mean, I saw pictures. It looked like a big mess.
Yeah. So it is a big mess. Yeah. The pictures, there was not flooding in the exact area we were. We later got in the car and saw entire streets underwater, like up above the cars.
Wow.
People just sitting on a log, looking at the river in their street, saying like, Yep. This was some heavy shit.
Now, I didn't read everything on this thing. How many deaths were there?
Initially they said 30. Later they bumped it up to 50.
Okay.
But they're not even counting people who died from maybe medications that they should have had, or
Sure. Hospitals losing power.
tough situations immediately after the hurricane.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay. So what did you do after the hurricane happened? Like, what were your tasks?
You know, you're interrupting your own questions.
Okay.
The first thing I saw after the hurricane, apart from the roofs blown off, if it was a tin roof, it was blown off.
Right.
Most of the urban area is constructed with some cement, so most structures were structurally sound and completely usable.
Cool.
Maybe a few windows missing, maybe it's wet and you don't have water or power, but you have a roof over your head.
Right.
And it's not going to fall on you,
Right.
which is very important.
Yeah.
So that was the good news, but that does not apply out in the mountains, in the central mountainous region of the country.
Right.
Their damage was much, much worse.
Okay.
And so my perspective, I call it my bubble, my perspective in the area where enough people speak English that my Spanish is still terrible, is a very different experience from even the average experience.
Right, and I think that's a good thing to point out is that there wasn't, in that sense, one hurricane. Each person experienced different hurricanes,
Yeah.
depending on their infrastructure, depending on where
Right.
they're at.
And I would say their information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is your cell phone working the whole time?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
So communication's out.
Yes.
And that's because cell phone towers are down, or
Cell phone
they
towers
don't
are
have
down.
electricity.
The condo we were in had the 20-floor condo. So as soon as the winds are down to 40 miles an hour, I go outside and climb the stairwell, which does not have, it's like an open to the outside stairwell. And I kind of hang my phone out and get some signal, and I get some WhatsApp through to my family. And so my family knows that I made it.
Right.
But this signal that I'm getting is from a cell tower potentially miles away. And oddly enough, it doesn't work the next day. And so I think,
it took a while for it to fail.
I'm Mr. Cool. I've got data. And then it went away. And then I spent days not having data. And that was really weird. I'd never been involuntarily without data for that long.
Right.
I mean, we're without data right now. There was, I expected this. And so, all right, I set up my vacation response on my email and everything.
I'm on vacation in a hurricane.
I did then too, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've gone off to retreats and left my devices off. But
Right.
no, this was a different feeling. This
Right.
was when I don't, even when I want to be online and I'm relying on this infrastructure, sometimes they're not as prepared as I am about keeping their stuff online. So I was prepared about having water and taking care of my needs, but they were not prepared about keeping their stuff online. So there I am offline, and I'm thinking wow, we could be doing a lot better than this. We could be having specific Wi-Fi spots that use a shared satellite uplink.
Right.
We could have apps that are specifically disaster-oriented data minimization apps.
Well, this gets into the question I was going to ask you, and I guess we're talking about now, is what can we do ahead of time?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that, I think. And you're realizing this because of your personal experience of being disconnected forcibly.
Right.
You no longer have connection to something you're used to for
Right.
the last couple decades.
Right. So I'm thinking of all these technological things, and I'm realizing at the same time, I'm watching. So this is after the hurricane now. What matters most? And this thing that we take for granted so much, matters so much, it's being able to tell your family I'm okay, and to be able to tell somebody this is what I need.
Right.
And so I'm at this point, I'm seeing some news. The country kind of gets its cell phone companies to coordinate and all share the cell phone towers, because some cell phone companies are doing better than others. Like one tower got their cable cut from somebody stealing the copper. But eventually they get it together and they're like, we're gonna share the data. And at this point, I've already found a couple spots with Wi-Fi, so I can get data whether or not my cell phone company is giving me data or not. And when I tried to get that hotel stay, it was booked, but I got one later. So a few days after the hurricane, I'm in this perfectly bubbled world of the most prepared hotel you can have.
Okay.
And they've got their own fiber optic line coming in. They've got their own fuel supply arranged. They've got plenty of water. And they don't have full, it's not full service at this moment. They're like, yeah, we're not washing your sheets, so just hang out and be cool.
Yeah, that's the least of your problems.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, yes, you have no idea. Thank you so much, for what I have here. And again, that's I can do that because I had the information that the storm was coming and I had the savings.
Right.
And not everybody had that option. So I was very thankful for everything that was going on at that moment. And I'm talking about this because I'm explaining that I have data and that they eventually coordinated to get data. And at that point, my news is the same as that almost anybody else can get. Because I'm reading the web pages. And I am talking to my friend who's Marisara, she was here, who's actively coordinating out to Arecibo, to a town that she identified as not getting attention from FEMA, having their roofs blown off, and having enough cohesion, social cohesion, to make progress with supplies that she can deliver.
Right. So she's connected with this community. She's already a motivated person. I met her when she was here. This is the kind of person you want in an emergency.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and so she is basically making this thing happen through private individuals, through her network. Mm-hmm. And so I'm contributing to this. That feels good. But it gives me this other perspective. And it is a very, very serious event. We're bringing them water filters, so they have safe water to drink.
Right.
They didn't have bottled water. They didn't get water deliveries.
Right, and water starts mattering really soon.
Yeah, yeah. Many of the people are cooking with propane, so they have a way to boil water. But at the time she's making these excursions, the fuel supply in the country is still it's still iffy. It's not if you try and call someone and say I want to buy fuel, it's not obvious they'll be able to come to you.
Right.
Many of the truckers are opting out of the chaos, both for their safety and because of their preparedness, their own situation. Their family comes first.
Right. They got their own house to take care of.
Right. So the governor of Puerto Rico does a bunch of stuff, basically a call for truckers, and eventually they get the security settled, and all kinds of stuff's going on. But at the same time, I'm watching these photo op opportunities of Army helicopter or Navy helicopter coming in and handing someone a pallet of individual water bottles. Mm-hmm. That's going to be great for 1 hour.
Right.
How about a water filter? Can you show me a picture that you were smart enough to bring them a water filter? Right. There's plenty of water in Puerto Rico.
That gets into the question, what do you actually need after this disaster?
Yes.
Now, and we'll focus on this disaster because each disaster is different. But in this case, so water filter is what they need. What else?
They need light. So they need
electricity.
They need solar, little solar lights, and they need headlamps.
You're talking about you're not talking about lighting up a building. You're talking about I need light so I can function at night.
Yeah.
At all. You need small lighting systems that you can use.
Yeah. If you want to do anything when it's dark. Yeah.
Right, and you have stuff to do now because
or in a
there's
house
big mess.
that you would normally rely on lighting to give you good lighting, enough light to function in.
Yeah.
So many of these things are exact same things you focus on here in the Bosque. And so, yes.
So distributed solar power would have helped because the grid wouldn't go down. Some places would be damaged, but there'd be light around.
Yes. Yeah. Although that is, keep in mind the average income in Puerto Rico is half that of rural Hawaii, which is like half that of a normal state in the continental U.S.
Right. So for a lot of people, there's not enough resources to invest in decentralized infrastructure, and so for them, the grid is the best option.
Not only that,
now.
but it's been a generation since they've really been hit by a Category 4 or Category 5 storm.
Right.
The last really, really strong storm to go all the way across the island was 1928.
Oh.
So there's a lot of
forgotten.
There's a lot of forgetting. Yeah.
Yeah. And people are actually, in some sense, more fragile because we're more dependent on a centralized infrastructure. Because in 1928, less people even had a refrigerator that wouldn't have electricity.
Right. Right.
So
it's interesting. It's interesting watching society kind of compress to the necessities because the main, in my bubble, in my area, the main supermarket was open.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
They were not selling ice, but they had water. They had water deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to go to the store and buy more fresh water and buy more Italian sausages that would keep without refrigeration and buy more tortillas and stuff like that. And almond butter. No, they didn't have the almond butter I like. I love almond butter. So my almond butter store supply was, they were shut down because they lost power and didn't have enough backup generation to stay on.
So buy almond butter before your hurricane.
Nut butters are awesome because you do not need any refrigeration. They have excellent shelf life, and even after you can open it and have as much as you want.
Yeah.
And you don't need to. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm. My kid, there wasn't enough for my kid. She's not as big an almond butter fan as I am. So, but fortunately, she likes cheese, and the hard cheeses keep great.
Yeah.
So
this gets into food storage issues.
Yeah.
Food preservation,
Right.
which we're big on here in the Bosque.
Right.
We don't have any refrigeration here. We use almost no electrical power, and we're interested in fermentation, kimchi, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay, so let's skip ahead a little bit. So we started talking about what you could do now to have the things you needed then.
Yes.
Basically, you went through a big lesson. You went through hurricane school.
Right. I went through practice hurricane and the actual real deal.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what now would you advise people to do in Puerto Rico or other places to prepare for hurricanes or potentially other disasters?
So first of all, I do need to point out that Puerto Ricans in general are pretty well prepared for hurricanes.
Cool.
They have cisterns on the top of their houses.
Mm-hmm.
They are, except for my stupidly designed architecture in my apartment, they are set to deal with no air conditioning and just open up all the windows.
Right.
They do have propane grills, and they're cooking meat, and they've got a big cooler, and they've got full. One of the funny things I saw was the bar that had an entire storeroom filled floor to ceiling with just simple beers.
Beer's a good supply to have.
Yeah, but this was a pretty big storeroom, and
Awesome.
They were open the day of the hurricane.
Did they charge the same price? Did they give a special low price, or did they raise the price?
I'm not a regular,
Okay.
but prices were very reasonable.
Right. So people that weren't, I think it's called...
Price gouging.
right, price gouging, because that can happen, and that you make enemies doing that.
You do make enemies, but you make enemies from people who don't understand that the function of price is to sort people who need something and are willing to pay for it
Right.
from people who don't actually need it that much.
Right.
And
beer is technically an optional. It's a luxury item. You don't have to have beer. It's just funner.
it's good to have canned beverages that are safe to drink.
Right.
But one of the things we observed, CVS, the pharmacy chain, was open, I think, the day after or a few days after. They were totally on it. So when I say the infrastructure compresses, some of these stores know that they're it, and they do an awesome job.
Right. They know they're important.
Yeah.
So you don't need the lingerie store open.
Right.
But you need your food and water.
Right. And so, this society is somewhat adapted, even though they took a hit that made them look unprepared. They are fairly prepared. And so we go to CVS, and this is interesting. They're open, and you can get stuff you need, but pretty much everyone there is doing this thing my friend calls comfort shopping. And comfort shopping is the flip side of price gouging, where the prices are the same, and you're just so happy that this piece of infrastructure is here. You're like, oh, I can buy chips. I need chips. Oh, I can buy,
Right.
I can buy this juice. I need this juice.
Right.
Right? I can buy candy. I think I need some candy. Right?
People are, they've just gone through a very traumatic experience.
Yes.
Which I'm going to ask, before we continue with the supplies thing, which I still want to investigate. This is a traumatic actual experience for people.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's scary.
Yeah.
I
mean, your entire modus of living is changing, and you're just adapting from day to day to all the chaos. And your life isn't threatened, but you are severely disrupted.
Yeah.
I lose the food from my refrigerator 3 times during the ensuing power's back on. I'm so happy. And then, oops, power's cut because they need to put up some other tower or switch things over or whatever. And I'm very, very lucky. I live on the same block as the most important hospital in my little touristy area. So this is the best hospital, and I happen to live on that block. And
Right. And I think that's an important thing to point out, actually. We talked about this before, that it's not one hurricane. There are people who don't have resources, and maybe it took weeks to get to them or something. I don't know.
I mean, I haven't checked the internet for a week, but when I arrived here, there were still, if I recall, at least 1 million people who had no power between September 2nd and September 20th, sorry, and November, whenever I arrived.
Right. So there were weeks without power.
Yeah,
Right.
So I arrived the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And so I think that's just important to point out because he's mentioning, that he's living in a bubble, that you're in a fairly privileged position, really, and that there's people who are they don't have resources.
Yes.
And so overall, and it's hard to gauge because you have your experience only. I mean, you can't talk for the whole country.
Right.
But do you think they had a good emergency response from the outside?
I was very, very surprised that 6 to 8 weeks after this hurricane, there were still it was about 5 weeks after the hurricane, there were still 1 million people without water.
Right.
And about 6 weeks after, there were still 500,000 people without water, tap water. Now they have access to water. Mm-hmm. They're getting water deliveries at the store, or they're boiling their water because they're getting fuel delivery. So it's interesting, the pyramid of needs, and fuel is in some ways for a place with enough rainfall and enough access to streams. It's you need fuel more than you need somebody to make the tap work.
Okay.
And so fuel is way up there. That energy is way, way up there.
Yeah.
Now, you don't need fuel if you have a water pump filter, but that's kind of an exotic idea. So it's not the sort of thing people are normally you have fuel because you have a propane barbecue, which is a very Puerto Rican thing to have, but you don't have a water pump,
Right.
because it's more in the like potential disaster thinking idea space. A water filter. Yeah, so the experiences are very different. Many people have things, and while others don't. And does the outside do a good job? Look, this is where I point out I'm reading web pages, except for my friend Marisara's like on, in the scene reports. And her in the scene reports are, she's driving out to this other town, but she's being stopped in the road by people who are like asking, can they help her? And it is an extreme stress for society. And Puerto Rican society does much, much better in this situation than your typical urban area in the United States.
You feel like there was social cohesion, people pulling together.
Yes.
There wasn't like looting. There must have been some.
Well, you had asked that question. What was the first thing you saw after the hurricane?
Mm-hmm.
I saw some people walking down the street with shampoo bottles. Really?
That's a priority. Yeah.
And then there was a place that got hit.
Yeah, but it sounds like generally, I mean, you're impressed with Puerto Rican people pulling together.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so, for instance, like the day after the hurricane, when the wind was completely gone, the restaurant across the street, who did have part of their roof blown off, got their barbecue out, and were selling their meat barbecued. And I bought that, and I felt like that was beautiful. And the moment the winds died down, all the neighbors with chainsaws got out and cleared the streets, because in the hierarchy of needs, transportation was at the top.
Okay, clear the streets.
Clear the streets, be able to get to the store that does have something.
Yeah.
Be able to visit your neighbor. You have fuel in your vehicle. Be able to use your vehicle to improve things. Transportation was at the top.
Okay.
Everybody basically did that for themselves. And the next night, I could drive from my friend's place back to my house and check on my scene.
How did your house go?
None of my windows broke.
Great.
Yeah, it was great. I had like this strange dirt blowing in the windows, but
so you did well.
it's nothing. Yeah.
Very cool. Now this gets into a question. You had an idea for what because you're a geek kind of. You think about these things. What can you think of could be a special solution to this sort of thing?
So I think there's. So I like the idea of maker spaces in general.
Maker spaces.
Yeah.
This is a community space with shared machining tools and shared geekery, whether it's lessons in electronics or just people come in and learn how to make things.
Yeah, and the CNC milling, computer controlled milling is a big thing that maker spaces do, because it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy all the equipment that you need. And you have enough to maintain a warehouse. And so I'm realizing that we don't have a compelling makerspace over there in the San Juan metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. And, a place where geeks can come in and not just geek out software. We already have co-working spaces where I meet all the cool geeks.
Right, this is mainly focused on physical.
This is much more focused on the physical and radio. Okay. And like basically things where you're doing control systems of other small motors and small switches.
3D printers.
Yeah. This is the place to have a 3D printer. You definitely want to have some good tools for cutting plywood. Mm-hmm. We want to be awesome on radio, and we want to be like the first guys up, and you can come to us and hit our webpage and or hit our Wi-Fi, which will be open, and we won't have all the internet for you, but we'll have a webpage with some JavaScript that can help you connect to people you want to connect with and get messages out. and tell people what you need and tell us what you need. So these are primary communication uses.
Who needs what where?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you were talking about like how well did the external agencies do? There's a webpage status.pr that kept track, and you can go over to archive.org or archive.is, either one, and you can get a previous view of the page, and probably somebody thought to ask them to snapshot it several times during the recovery period. I didn't, so I hope somebody did. Go internet. You can watch the progress there. And so one thing that people don't understand very well is that FEMA's stated purpose is to coordinate among other agencies in an area.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes FEMA looks bad because they're not like bringing the goods.
But that's not their job.
Their job is to find the people who need the goods. Mm-hmm. And so when FEMA says we are doing our analyses, what they're doing is they're trying to fulfill that function of saying who needs what where.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there was an aircraft carrier station nearby. They were sending their helicopters over. I just think it's so dumb that they brought water bottles.
Really?
But, okay, they brought water bottles.
Yeah.
The mayor of each municipality, I think, did get a satellite phone. I don't know if it was all of them, because I heard people bringing satellite phones out to Vieques on one of the outlying islands that got completely smashed. And I heard of them bringing those cell phones way later. And that seemed to be a big deal, with people lining up for hours to get the message out.
Right.
That they were, like, alive.
Right.
So how do the agencies do? That's about where my knowledge ends there.
Right. It's hard to know that when you're in the moment there.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to get into political stuff. Famously, the mayor of San Juan said people are dying. She was not really exaggerating. She was complaining about FEMA, saying they were having a good press event. She was right to complain about that. But FEMA hadn't done a totally bad job. But my impression, my feeling out of this, that's another question you asked already, and I've been trying to answer, but we kind of drifted off. Apparently you think I answer questions too slowly, and you just keep asking new questions.
it's not a short video, but that's all right.
So the feeling is PSTD.
Uh-huh.
Like, where the fuck did my life go, and why am I not getting anything done?
Right.
And this is a lot of work. I didn't think this would be my life, but this is my life now.
Right.
And so adapting. Are we allowed to swear on these videos?
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
And
good.
people don't like it, can deal.
Okay.
Or go away.
Or you can beat me out. Either way.
We could bleep things. I haven't done it before. I should learn.
Are we going for the more open, broad, commercially accessible audience, or?
Interesting question. It's a side question, and you're involved in that as a person who's watching this. You can comment and say what you'd like to have. I tend to go with pretty honest. I want honest. And so some people won't like what we say. You just not experience, but I'm interested in your experience. If they're interested, they'll watch it. Right. So people can weed themselves out. We're
old friends. We're not in the polite mode here.
No,
but,
we can be pretty open without,
yeah,
directly attacking people too much.
So anyway, this PTSD, I'm feeling it like minimally. Mm-hmm. But other people are feeling a lot more. People who are taking care of their family. Marisara's mother dies between the hurricanes, and she's arranging a funeral between the hurricanes.
Right.
Which, it's a very big life disruption. So in this, while I'm feeling all this, I'm I'm feeling this sense of purpose, questioning what can I as a geek do.
Right.
And so I said, I'm going to make this mobile makerspace.
Mobile makerspace.
Yeah.
So you got the idea of makerspace.
That's one
where
style.
people make
Yeah.
things, but
Yeah.
this is one that shows up to a place that specially needs it.
We're going to focus, our makerspace is going to be focused on stuff that you want after a hurricane. And it's the entire Caribbean is our audience here.
Right.
So we're going to be container based. We're going to be focusing on communications.
This is a shipping container.
Yeah.
So the shipping container lands in a spot,
Yes.
and it's a set of tools that are specially needed. Now, the
Yes.
thing I've heard you say over and over is water filters. You don't need to make those at the time. You just ship the water filters in, hopefully, and hopefully people already have them. That'd be nicer. So what does this shipping container have in it that people need?
Okay, so at the time a shipping container can arrive, it's already a week after whatever happened.
Okay.
So we're not dealing on like the next day. We're dealing like a week out. At that time, a perfectly coordinated hurricane, you would already have massive shipments of like water filters. Maybe there were massive shipments of water filters in Puerto Rico, but I didn't hear about any.
Right.
You've already got a situation where people are okay. They have some first aid needs. There's some coordination needs, and whatever we're doing, there are other agencies doing it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was still surprised how hard it was to get communications, specifically of the kind of important communications that I needed as the kind of geek that I am.
Mm-hmm.
When they fixed the cell phone stuff, they said, well, we're only going to allow voice because we want to conserve data.
Oh, and text is much cheaper.
So they did allow some text as well, but they didn't allow data. Now, data is much, much more valuable for me because I can go to a place that's giving the right answer instead of asking a family member.
We're comparing internet access versus voice?
Yes.
Okay, so data means internet.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I want data.
Right.
And I want Wi-Fi access. And I want that Wi-Fi access to have web pages that are optimized for restoring these communications.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the ham radio guys and gals, they are very good at helping during the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of do this text messaging style stuff. Like they'll relay a message for you if you can find one of them and get the message to them. And the radio stations fulfill this function as well. But this was a big enough hurricane. There was only one radio station left.
Wow.
Yeah. This was a big deal. Yeah.
And that's because their antenna got smashed. They don't have power.
Both, yeah.
Okay.
So speaking of antennas getting smashed, the airport radar, Doppler radar went down. Doppler is shared for both airport uses and weather uses.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a dome that was rated for 150 mile an hour winds. The dome got smashed, and it got smashed.
Yeah, it's only cost effective to build things so strong.
Right.
In this case, it was bigger than planned for.
So the military immediately set out on an expedition. They couldn't get there because there were too many trees in the way.
Wow.
Because this was put out in an area that had good elevation properties and did not have good road properties.
Right.
And so they screwed up and they didn't keep their roads clear enough.
Right.
And so that was a really interesting lesson. And the kind of thing like, what other islands in the Caribbean are going to get that right?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and a lot of islands don't have a lot of resources. Dominica, for example.
I haven't been, but definitely, again, a much lower standard of living on average than Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has been connected with the United States for a long time, and there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of interconnection between families in Puerto Rico and the more than half of Puerto Ricans who don't live in Puerto Rico, who live in the United States.
Right.
And we can get into the history of Puerto Rico in another video or whatever. So mobile makerspace, just focusing on whatever people need when we can get our container in a week after.
Right.
And that means rebuilding, that means certain supplies, and that means much, much better communications.
That's something I'd be interested in. This is a good thing for feedback from people watching this as well, is what would you put in a mobile makerspace?
And so if, at the point that that people start really liking the mobile makerspace idea, then we can drop them there before the hurricane hits.
Right.
And then we can get into a whole nother swath of things that people need.
Yeah. Very cool. So to wrap it up a little bit, you've just been through a big natural disaster for the first time in your life. How is this for you as a person? How does this change you emotionally, intellectually? I mean, obviously you're motivated on the makerspace idea, but what else?
So I'd been in Puerto Rico for several years, and much of my other work is very abstract, like what is finance type stuff. This is very real and very connected.
Visceral. Very
visceral. And it is something that Puerto Ricans are now ready for, which was a feeling I didn't really have before. Mm-hmm. But the feedback I'm getting is that people are ready for this kind of preparedness. Mm-hmm. And I will get much more support. And so I feel like this is a very clear mission, and I'm on it. And It feels great.
So you're gonna work on defining things and systems and tools to make this so that next time, first of all, that people are more prepared, so the damage is less, the response is quicker.
Yeah.
And that's going to matter to a lot of people. It's kind of exciting. I mean, I'm not in Puerto Rico. I'm sure it was very scary and frustrating, but I like the idea that this shocking event has occurred that will cause people to take action. It's causing you to take action. Yeah. And it's going to cause a country to take action. A state, a territory?
A territory, a commonwealth.
A commonwealth.
Not a state. But I am very happy when it's on the drop down on the online order forms. You never know if it's going to be a country or a state or like on a state list, a territory listed not in the alphabetical section in the below the states section.
Right.
That happens too. Come on, internet guys, get your stuff together. And gals. So people are ready for it. And I'm ready for it.
So you're ready for it. You're changed. The Puerto Rico is probably going to focus a lot more since this is the first time it's happened since 1928. You said?
No, not the first time.
Just big.
Jorge went across the island, and it was a very big deal.
No, it was in the 80s. You said
this was I think that was in 2000, and then and then there was one in the 80s that was also super big. Hugo. Mm-hmm.
So the cool thing is that you, as a person moving from the, I guess you've lived in the Northeast and you've lived in the West, and you now live in Puerto Rico. This brings you together with the people in some way. You know, I mean, you feel more Puerto Rican.
I feel more Puerto Rican for having gone through this with them and for having a clear way to contribute.
Awesome.
In not just an abstract way.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I don't know a lot about Puerto Rico. I know more about it now than I did before. And I'm excited that they're probably going to be thinking a lot about alternatives. Because obviously here in my own project, I'm thinking about how should we live? How should we do this?
Yeah.
And so this is going to sharpen some focus for some people. And I hope they do pull together and make a better Puerto Rico.
And that's what brought me here. I finally sharpened my focus and said, why have I not visited Brian yet?
Yeah, well, hopefully I'm doing cool stuff. We'll learn together.
All right.
And see what we can do. Thanks for joining us. Adios.